National Academic Journals in Behavioral Finance, Corporate Social Responsibility, and Microfinance, and another 20 publications in professional journals. Quite impressive. Recently, he's been reflecting on the stress that micro-entrepreneurs who are relying solely on microcredit are facing. And to date, his favorite solution for this issue has been to use micro-angels and micro-equity. This has led him here to Boulder and to his current research on slow money. Please make welcome Arvind Aftab.
I guess I'm now part of the slow money movement in France. I'm actually a professor at the Burgundy School of Business, which is mentioned there. This is a very progressive school. We have chairs in social entrepreneurship, corporate social responsibility, sustainable development, microfinance, and so on. I'm holding the microfinance chair, and we have a small team of 6 people doing that. The chair is financed by Bank Populaire, which is a mutualist bank, which is very progressive also, and it looks after especially entrepreneurial finance. This particular project of slow money was financed by the Burgundy Regional Council, so the local government is interested in proximity finance as well as virtual finance. My interest in this subject has come a bit from my Indian origin, my French nationality, and my influence by American dissidents in Paris. And I'm sure if you came to Paris, you would identify with them. In any case, from my Indian roots, I saw some similarities between your concepts and the work of Gandhi. Most of you have heard of Gandhi as a freedom fighter, and especially using non-violence. And I think one of your leading magazines clubbed him as the genius of the last century, along with Albert Einstein. So I guess by now you must have heard of him. Anyway, this particular photo shows him in Indian clothes outside 10 Downing Street, I guess. And this is his concept of local, wearing local clothes manufactured by local goods. But his concept of local is also self-rule and autonomy. And that autonomy doesn't mean that you just decide your own rules, but it also means that you don't export if you don't have enough. You first consume. And you import only if you can export. And to consume, you involve everybody in the village or in the town to contribute to production. The second concept which was interesting is Gandhi had already thought, now this is his writings before 1948, so somewhere between 1901 and 1948, the collection of essays which are undated. So the second thing is, he started off by saying it should be agriculturally linked. But very soon he realized that we don't need only food, we also need clothing. And we also need shelter. So he went on to artisanal goods. And he was already warning at that time that Manchester, by destroying Indian cotton goods, had not solved Manchester's or England's problem. They were still having their own problems. And so he said that if you don't take care, our planet is going to have a lot of problems. But today, it already has those problems. We heard about these mountain tops being cut off in the US, and you can't restore it. So we need some kind of alternative investments today to make amends, so that A is for mends. And these kind of appropriate investments in technology to make sure that productivity does not increase so much that everybody is not employed. My own solution would not say that. My own solution would say productivity should be let to increase as much as it wants, but the work should be shared so that we have more leisure. And if we have more leisure, we will demand more cultural goods, we'll demand for more interesting goods, and people will have opportunities to provide more interesting services, cultural services. The third concept, and from here we go from Gandhi to Schumacher, is a small concept. I mean, I'm into micro, but they were into small. And the I won't read out the quote. You've already seen it tons of times on the website as well as in Booty Tash's book. But he had this concept of trusteeship. That this trusteeship is that we are guardians of the society and of the planet. And it's up to you to fulfill that fiduciary or fiduciary responsibility. Anyway, this concept of small, as well as appropriate technology, especially appropriate technology, was developed in Small is Beautiful by Schumacher. A few years later down the line, I see another movement which is starting, which is called slow movement, which is about patience. Patience means taking one's time to taste. I gulp food down, and it's just something which I've learned to do ever since I was a kid. And I'm reminded again and again that I have to take that time. I have to take my time also to share, whether it's love or anything else. It requires time. It takes me a lot of time to read. I read very slowly. But somebody told me you have to read every word. You can't fast read. Because if the author wrote that word, he meant it to be read. And finally, take one's time to read, teach. And this I learned from my students. Being Indian, I tend to speak very fast. And the French students which I have are not used to this kind of rapid speaking with this kind of accent. So over the years, they've criticized me enough for me to slow down. Finally, I had a nice thing going with PALS, which is PALS. But then I read Booty Tash's book. Okay, he spoiled it all by adding one more element, which is human. It went off very well with my research with another colleague, which I'll talk about later, which is on P2P, person to person, human interaction, cutting out intermediaries, cutting out not just shares, but derivatives of shares and derivatives of derivatives and structured finance, which is sliced, diced, and whatnot, till nobody knows what's happening. So, what he's saying is basically, all these number of intermediaries lead to a total incomprehension of the system. And we need a direct system, a human system, where we understand, given normal IQ levels, of what is happening. So now I'm lost. I don't have an anagram. I don't have a word. So I will trust that you will send me emails, or you'll find another vowel somewhere and tell me what to do. In any case, at this point, I want to tell you what happened. I was very happy with microfinance. Microfinance was booming, and I was researching it and I was admiring it, and they were getting Nobel prizes and whatnot. And then one day, an IPO was oversubscribed 13 times in Mexico. And we found out that the interest rates were 80% or plus VAT, so almost 99%. And we said there's a problem. Then a few years later, there was another IPO in India, which was also oversubscribed 13 times, and the interest rates were only 25%. But the profitability and the growth was immense. And the government felt there was a problem. How can people make so much money and expect such high growth rates by lending to poor people? So the government said that the suicides which we are seeing in farms is coming because of microcredit. Because people have taken more than one loan, people have taken 2 loans, 3 loans, 4 loans, even 5 loans, and now they are over-indebted. So along with 2 of my colleagues, Saleh Khan and Filipotto, I did research on suicides. And I read Emil Durkheim. My research is not as good as Emil Durkheim's. He was alone, he took years, and I just did a quick job to get an idea. He didn't have a calculator, I had computers. He didn't have a statistician, Filipotto is a statistician. But my conclusions came to the fact that I saw correlation somewhere, but not significant. Where there was no correlation or very low correlation, it was significant. There was some dependency, but all this was with male suicides, not with female suicides. So we thought what was going wrong, and finally we came to the conclusion that maybe there's no fire, but there's certainly smoke. So there is some stress. And what is the stress being caused by? And if you're into entrepreneurial microfinance and not consumer microfinance, you think immediately that the stress of an enterprise, an over-leveraged enterprise, comes from inadequate equity. So the solution is not micro savings, as a lot of my colleagues are saying. Because if those poor people had the savings, the entrepreneurs had the savings, they would put it in equity, in their own firms. You wouldn't see it in the bank. So I said, I need to find micro equity. And I started looking around. And guess what? In my backyard, that means in the suburbs of Dijon, in a place called Kitigny, there were these micro angels. These micro angels offering micro equity. Micro, so micro that even I could have done it. They were offering 7.5 euros to 450 euros a month. Each person puts this much money in. It's a club. I haven't seen anybody putting in 450, but I've seen people putting in 7.5, 20. The average is 25. 13 of these people, on the average, okay, put money together, and that comes to about 300 euros a month. And in 10 months, they have about 3,000 euros, which they then invest in somebody's second-hand truck, or a sewing machine, or a table to put outside the market, or something. So finally, we had a microequity example going. So I said, okay, this is a great example. How's it doing? It's doing well, but not so well. I don't think I have a thingy to show the thing, but one of these axes is number of clubs, and the other one is how many members there are. And today there are almost 3,000 members after almost 30 years, after 30 years in fact. Initially it grew very fast, and then it stagnated. And for some years, especially near the end, we have no data because there was no federal structure who was getting the data. And so now, again, in the time of crisis, it's grown again. So I said, okay, let me do some more work and find out what went wrong. How come such a beautiful movement has not grown more? So we interviewed all the leading people. I interviewed about 15 people in Paris, Lille, and Dijon. And I found that there were a series of reasons, and along with my co-authors, we wrote a paper, and you can see all the reasons in each of these headings there, but I'll give you an example of one each. There are ideological problems, such as, if you want to be a local movement, you don't want to ask the state for help, because you think you can do it alone. There's a motivational problem, because if you're investing for 5 years, you should be able to go in for delayed gratification. But not everybody is into delayed gratification. People want to see results to keep their motivation going. The institutional blocks. You can give equity only if it's a registered company. How do you give equity to an individual shareholder? And finally, there's a communication blocks. Yeah, that means the entrepreneurs are not forthcoming. People don't know about you. And this brings us back to Gandhi. And I'll show you why. First, I tried to find out how many entrepreneurs had heard of slow food, slow money, or cigars. And what I found, good news, 19% had. Bad news, 81% had not. We interviewed about 80 micro entrepreneurs around Dijon. And here's where Gandhi comes in. Gandhi comes in because his genius was not that he was a freedom fighter or that he was doing peaceful protests. It's because he could communicate at every opportunity. So you need somebody who can communicate. And this is what is missing in this movement. And this is what Woody Dash has. He has created a system which is able to communicate thanks to internet. Anyway, I looked at some other movements and I tried to see how many of these movements, each of these movements, fulfill all the criteria of what I described as the characteristics of local money, slow money, human, agricultural, and patient. Okay, I won't read out the results, but you have them there. My interest in this whole area came because somebody asked me to write a chapter on slow money. Till then, I'd never heard of it. And then finally, they were writing a book on slow management. And funnily enough, they decided to put us all as co-authors in the end instead of keeping themselves as editors. And this was another kind of sharing, which I was never used to, which I've never seen before. And these are the themes. This book is about to come out soon. Okay. Now, who's this guy? You've never seen this guy. Okay. This is my local contact. This is a colleague of mine who is a professor of e-marketing. His name is Jamshid Asadi. And he's always looking at virtual proximity. And he says, out of virtual and proximity, there's one word which is redundant. Virtual means to proximity. You can almost touch that guy, just like the guy in Matrix. Okay, so with him, we've been researching crowdfunding now for many years, since 2008. And, I just want to mention that with crowdfunding, and if you're virtually proximate to somebody in Africa, and you give $20, it might be a small amount for you. It might be a big amount for him. Okay, so I don't know if it's small enough to be slow, but it can make an impact. Thanks.